What's that? I should have the microphone. Now it's on.
Yeah.
Thanks. So some of you are in the know, but raise your hand if you know why today's theme is. Good, most people don't. Well, a couple people do. We'll answer that here a little bit later. Okay? I was going to start today by coming into that music in a grass skirt and dancing the hula, but over the holidays I Googled or YouTubed how to dance the hula, and I started practicing it at home, and my wife told me it was obscene. So then, is Joanna Lynch here? She's been sick, right? So she brought me a ukulele, and I forgot it. I left it at home. And I practiced some, 3 chords, learning to play a little song. She told me it was even more obscene. So I wasn't going to do either one. Just dress up and pretend it's 80 degrees, not -4 out there. But it's good to have you here. We want to have a little fun this morning, sort of celebrate a couple of good things that are happening here at the college, but also do some work that we need to do. And we have some updates and things that we need to go through. Then I'm going to do a brief presentation. That's when we'll talk about why the theme today is Hawaii Five-0. I resisted the urge. I don't know about you, but when you see the names of the actors like Jack Lord and others, of Googling them to see if they're still around, I resisted that urge. He's not, right?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so, but the others I wasn't sure about. But anyways, I watched that a lot as a kid, and I resisted the urge to use the modern version of Hawaii Five-0, because if you're younger than this version, you need to go back and watch some of these. They're pretty good. So let's start with some updates from our vice presidents and others who need to give us some information about things that are going on.
Oh.
Would you be okay, Diane? Would you be ready? No? We don't have to start with you.
That looks like a yes.
How many times have you seen Diane lost her work?
I was assuming that I was going to go kind of near the end.
Okay. Gary, did you have anything you wanted to say?
I only have bad news. This is a celebratory time.
Okay. Well, actually,
budget cuts and
your bad news is not that bad, particularly. So we'll hit that when I do my speech then, okay? Don Sheeman. I know Don has a couple things he wants to talk about. And we're using this is being broadcast all of our overseas in Canada.
If he ordered an attack on Canada, please.
I wouldn't do that. Trump might, but I don't.
We're in so much trouble. Good morning. A couple of quick things, but this is 99% good news. And I say that because as with the advancement, one part that you're going to go, that sounded like a ass. So I will end with that. News is, when you have a staff member who has done phenomenal work for the college and decides they're going to leave the college, it's a sad time, but then you get all the great things they've done. And for those of you who haven't heard, Dr. Joe Zouch is going to be retiring at the end of January as the Director of Institutional Effectiveness Research and Planning. With that, we decided we should replace Dr. Zouch at some point, and we did. And you all definitely know her replacement. And while you can't replace Joe, we think we found someone who can do the job extremely well and be a great partner for each and every person. The new Director of Institutional Effectiveness Research and Planning for the college is Dr. Brittany Ennis. I can tell you right now, one of the neat things about having that in my area is, in all honesty, it's great to go someplace where you can ask a question and know you will get an answer that is accurate, detailed, and above my head. Second thing is, we want to thank everybody who has supported the foundation and the college this year. One of the things we've done is had a great Jubilee. And this is kind of neat because last year for 17-18, I gotta make sure I keep Carla Hall in sight line here in case she frowns at me for screwing up the numbers. For the 17-18 academic year, 76 students were awarded over $115,000 in gifted money to either the foundation or the college. That's great. And that included 12 Jubilee scholarships from last year. The good news is, for 2018-19, we're going to have over 15 Jubilee scholarships because we netted over $115,000 from this past year's Jubilee alone. So thank each and every one of you who keep people happy with the college because that makes them prospective.
Because name recognition is critical, and it's just not where we need it to be. So Ben, thank you, and please get involved in the ways that you can. Laura's here. Is Laura, are you ready to go?
Good morning. Ben has an inspiring PowerPoint, and I have this. So I'm going to keep it really brief. I have just a couple of really practical things that I wanted to share, and then I do have something a little more inspiring to end on. But I'm revved up. That was a fantastic presentation from Ben, and I'm equally excited to be here. So one thing, just a reminder, at the end of last semester, I was plugging a leadership event for students. It's going to be on February the 2nd, which is Groundhog Day. And I just want to remind you to please keep that at the front of your mind as students are looking for opportunities to engage on campus, to grow and develop their leadership skills. Be a talent scout in your classrooms and look for students who might be interested in growing in that way. And if you want to give a little extra credit, that'd be awesome too. So help us fill the room on February 2nd. It's from 10 to 2. Another thing I just wanted to let you know is that in December we had a Student Success Core Team meeting where all of our, what we call action groups, got together and reported out on the work they had done over the fall semester and the things that have been accomplished. I'm not going to go into all of that for you today, but I just want to let you know that if anybody in the back of your mind has wondered, whatever happened to achieving the dream, or whatever happened to strategic enrollment management and retention initiatives, all of that work is alive and well, and ATD 2.0 and all of the things that you heard about. There are lots of teams that are still working very hard on moving us forward in the area of student success. And what we are going to do is for the February faculty meeting, we will have a document to report to be able to showcase the updates and accomplishments and highlight the good work that's being done by faculty and staff in about a dozen different arenas under the guise of retention and student success. So you can look forward to that. We won't go into it today, but we're really moving strong in that direction. Another thing I did want to tell you, though, is one thing that I've heard, you all know, if you've been around for a while, you know I'm kind of the Achieving the Dream cheerleader, and I've really been a big part of all of our work in that area for a long time. And some of you have a sour taste about that, and others are real strong believers in it, and there's mixed bag, and that's okay. But one thing I do know is one of the negative things that happened was early on, one of the first things that we tackled, we called the front door experience. And Valerie remembers that very well, and she was at the front of making a lot of good work happen in that area. But one thing that we did was we set a calendar of deadlines. And we had an admission application deadline, and we cut off orientations, and we tried to help students do everything earlier so that they would start out on their best foot and have their books in hand and their finances situated and really could focus on being in class and ready to learn on the first day. And many of you know that after about a year of doing that, things began to happen to us in terms of our financial crisis, an enrollment downturn, and it wasn't because of that, it was coincidental that at the same time we were starting to do some really good things, some bad things started happening. And so because of that financial crisis, we began to back away from some of the good decisions that were made because we had a need to say we have to leave our door open and get every student in because we needed the revenue. Right? Does everyone remember this? Many of you? Okay. And it was very disappointing, and a lot of faculty were really upset and thought, I thought we drew a line in the sand and we said we're going to do the right thing, and now we're backing away from doing the right thing. And it's a catch-22 when you're in a situation like that. You do want students to be successful, and you want to do the right thing, but you also need money to keep your doors open. Well, now we have turned the corner, and we are in a healthier time until Gary comes and says otherwise. Which we got half an hour. But we're healthier than we have been. And so we are now ready to take another approach to having some deadlines for the benefit of students, for the benefit of all of us. And so I wanted to tell you that one of the things that we have decided to do is for this coming fall, we have a priority deadline for admissions, which will be July the 20th. And then we will stop orientations for the fall semester on August the 3rd, which means we are attempting to have some space between the time students are starting the process of getting in and starting classes. Now, what is going to make this work is going to be a strong and healthy 12-week option for a September start. So when someone comes at the beginning of August, we're not saying, no, the door is closed, wait till January. We're saying, okay, let's have you start in September, and we'll have orientations that begin later in August for a September start. Now, it's going to take a lot of coordination between now and really just the next few months to make sure that we are able to follow through on that promise, but that's going to be what makes the difference and what makes it work, is that we're not telling people no and delaying them 4 months. It's just going to be a different start date. So that's what we're going to try to do, but I hope that that will kind of revive some hope and promise that we are trying to do the right things for students and for our institution. So that's one kind of as minor big news that we'll share about what's happening in the front door experience area. So anyway, second thing I wanted to tell you that's more along the process line, I think Amanda is here. Tyndall, yeah, there you are. So, you know, last semester we talked about the online withdrawal process rolling out this term. So Amanda is here, and she is going to just talk for a couple of minutes about that. But while we're talking about processes, I just want to mention one thing that I think a lot of people are still confused about, and that is what we call our administrative withdrawal. The administrative withdrawal is available to students who are unable to withdraw in a normal process. So if it's during the semester and they get sick or there is a crisis in their life, they can still withdraw the normal way. They do not need to be directed to the administrative withdrawal if the opportunity to withdraw through the normal process is still available. The administrative withdrawal happens when they come back the next semester and they have all failing grades because they were unable to come in and withdraw due to a crisis situation. So it's important that I keep talking about this because we still have students who show up under the impression that because there was a catastrophic life event or a major illness that they're not going to have to pay for the semester. And that is not how it works. So we can salvage their academic record by changing the E's to W's, but they are still responsible for whatever financial obligations they had to the college. So just please be careful because it's really painful when they are coming under the impression that there's a solution to their problem when we don't have that to offer. Now I will say on the positive side, since that was kind of negative, on the positive side, we are, I should have brought with me the numbers to share with you. The Student Emergency Fund that we've had for years and years, because this year it was made more visible to students and we communicated with students that we actually have this fund available and we put it on our website. It has been used far more than it ever has been before. And I will report back to you and let you know how much that was. Carla, I know, has those numbers.
This year, we've awarded over $5,000. It helped 13 students.
Okay, so that's 13 students who in the past we may have lost, and so that's a great start, and just remember that is available as well. Okay, so now on processes, administrative withdrawal, now online withdrawal. I'm going to let Amanda just give you a quick update and reminder.
Okay, I could make this fun. I might be able to sing it like a musical, but I won't, and we'll just do online withdrawal and be boring for just a second. When I spoke to you guys at the faculty meeting in November, there were lots of questions still out there about the online withdrawal process. It's January, it's go time, so now we have answers, and I'm just going to make this brief and short. Starting after the 100% drop deadline, so we'll talk session 1 dates to kind of give you the majority of the process. It will start on the 15th, so while we're all home for Martin Luther King Day, our students will start the new drop process. If they want to drop a class, they won't use a drop slip, they won't email the records office, they will go into their self-service and click on online forms and complete the drop. Before midterm, the records office will allow about a 48-hour time period to allow students to maybe go, oops, I didn't really need to do that, oh my gosh, I'm going to owe money, what is this? To change their mind and then we'll process those drops for the students. At midterm, when faculty permission is required, you will get a notification in your email that says you have a student that would like to withdraw. There will be a link in your email for you to click on to go see it, so you don't have to necessarily know where to go in PeopleSoft. You'll go in, you'll be able to review the student, who the student is, the reason they're asking to withdraw, and you can select approve or deny. That can all be done electronically. If you haven't seen the process in a visual format and would like me to resend that to you, I can just email me and I'll send that out for you guys. And just know that this will streamline the process. As soon as the student makes the request, the form stays live until you approve or deny it. So that means when it gets to the deadline day, they can make the request at 11:59, and you guys don't have to be checking your email at 11:59 to approve it to get it to the records office in time. So there's some real gains by going this way. Just know, I know everybody has a life. I know at the November faculty member meeting, we talked a little bit about a notification system if your form had sat there for a day or two. That is not currently happening, so hopefully that's good news for you. I will be monitoring just to make sure it didn't go to your clutter, because you all know clutter is fabulous. So I'm gonna check it about once a week just to make sure you don't have any outstanding forms that are by accident. You may get an email from me, which might also go to clutter. So maybe check your clutter. I know. Read my emails. So just keep checking your clutter, looking for these. I'll be communicating. If anything is extremely outside the timeline, we'll be calling you just to check in to make sure everything's okay. So that's just the quick online withdrawal update. It's completely automated. If a student shows up with a form, give them the good news. If you have forms in your area, get rid of them. They are archaic. They are no more. Two quick updates that are not part of the online withdrawal process. Angela Johnson sent out the no-show dates for the semester yesterday. Also, I've heard in clutter, so check your clutter for those. And third, the graduation deadline is February 9th. We are faster, better, stronger on the graduation timeline turnaround. So tell your students to apply now. They will hear something very quickly within 2 weeks. They have time to add a 12-week, hopefully, and 6-week, a hybrid, whatever they need to class for the spring term. And that's it. Any questions?
Yes. Is the ticket escalation on the online withdrawal gone forever, or have they just not implemented it yet?
I think the technology behind it was more than they could tackle it right now. I'm not gonna say it's gone forever. Forever is a long time in case it's yes. So I would say I can't answer that accurately. Right now, the lovely registrars are kind of watching it. Now, I could totally set it up where you get them all.
No.
Okay. It is. Yes. I do have the ability to go in and add. Like, I can set it up if we want. But at this point, I feel like it's just better if I kind of just make sure they're getting done, like, in a week. I mean, things happen. And then just making sure things aren't going to clutter and kind of doing it in that manner instead of some big automated whatnot. Because I don't think anybody would ignore them on purpose.
And I'm assuming that the date that the student initiates that becomes the official date for calculating Title IV.
Correct. So on the financial aid side, there is a process where they can run a query that pulls the initiation date, which, if you guys know, is what we have to do for federal regs for return to Title IV funds. So financial aid will get that date. It's not the date we approve or deny. Yes.
I have 2 questions. So are all 16 colleges doing the online?
All 16. So it was piloted in the spring and it's full on now.
Second of all, first 8-week classes, the deadline for dropping 100% is the 11th.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't go live to the 15th.
It's based on the deadline. So if it's a shorter session, it's still using the 100% drop date. So on our academic calendar, you'll see a big old highlighted yellow that says online withdrawal form goes live. So if you're teaching the 16th, one of the 8s or the 12th, that date is out there on the website for you.
I saw that, but if I have somebody who needs the drop, should they still use, well, they can't use the online one until the 15th. Should they use the old system until they're going to drop?
Actually, if it's an 8-week class, as soon as the 100% drop date passes for that class, it goes live. So for an 8-week, if the drop date 100% is the 11th, their form for that class goes live the 12th.
Okay.
So it's based on the class. I use the 16 because that's the
Yeah, I
one that's, yeah.
understand. That's
But
why
it's,
I
it
go
is
through-
based on the section. So if you're teaching a hybrid course or if you're teaching Learn on Demand, those are pinpointed for those sections as well.
Okay.
Oh, I think it's-
I have a last name that's similar to one of my faculty members, and occasionally the students get us mixed up. If I get forwarded that, they put the wrong instructor's name, can I forward it on to the other instructor? Does that affect the link or anything?
It's based on whoever is set up as the primary instructor in PeopleSoft. So this is, I know Diana's talked about this, you want to make sure your classes are accurate and who's teaching what. So if you're listed as the primary instructor, the notification is built within PeopleSoft, so there will be no forwarding from a student. And then if I'm looking, I'm gonna make sure I have the right instructor. I mean, I do make a few mistakes, don't tell anybody, but I will make sure it gets to the right person.
And Amanda, this means that we need to be much more careful or much quicker about getting everything in PeopleSoft correct as soon as possible.
Correct.
Because it will screw up this.
Right, so if you have a last minute hire, which I know happens from time to time, you wanna get that staff turned off as quickly as possible so that by midterm it's all good to go. Or mid-session. Is that good?
Do the students have to give a reason they're withdrawing, and is that multiple choice?
It is not multiple choice. I think they can only select one. And it's kind of like the basics. It's childcare, transportation, work, personal, I think, is an option, which I can see a lot of students selecting. I can't think of the other ones right now. But what I like about this, there's the 6, they do select, and then this is gonna be data we can pull later, which I think a lot of us wanna know. Why are students leaving, or why are they saying they're leaving, which we haven't had a way to gather that in the past. Anyone else? All right, well, that was my musical. It's not Hamilton. But you all have a good rest of your day. If you have any registration needs, we're open.
Thanks, Amanda. Okay, this is the last thing on my list. One of the best things that happened in 2017 was our partnership with 15,000 Degrees and a program that we call Rise Together. And this morning, I've asked Danielle if she'll just give you a couple of updates on how that partnership went and how our first cohort of students performed. This fall semester, we had an FYE 105 class that was dedicated for students who live in Zones of Hope neighborhoods. Danielle was the instructor, Brittany was her assistant, and the students participated not only in the course, but in coaching sessions. And she's got some updates, and then we have a real feel-good story that kind of comes at the end of this. But our community partnerships are incredibly important to us, and partnerships like this, I think, are going to make all the difference for students when they have support here on campus and in the community. So come on down, Danielle. And I'll let her tell you about what's been happening for us together.
Good morning, y'all. So first, happy story happened over the break, actually. So I was meeting with Zayna Jackson, who is our one of our 15K partners, and trying to give like an update on like how the semester went and like ways we can make it better. And I was like, well, one thing I've noticed is that a lot of students don't have a heavy coat. And I was like, we're approaching 3-degree weather, which I am not used to myself. I'm a true Southerner. This is like Antarctica. I am Southern. I'm Southern, yes. And I know they ride the tarp. And so this was like on a Monday we met. By Wednesday, Rajon Rondo, who I know because I'm Black Catholic, donated 23 North Face jackets, hats, and coats to everybody in the cohort, and they got to meet him. Those who could pick him up on that Sunday went to go and meet him, and those who have children, got coats for their kids. Brand new coats. I'm so grateful for this partnership because it really helps our students. And they were so excited. When I texted them, they thought I was pranking them. I was like, y'all, it's Christmas. I ain't got time for this. Go to the coats. Like, go to the coats. And so they were excited. And I went to go pick up the rest yesterday. And the lady who, Rajon, had started his foundation. And she was like, he's looking to do grassroots things. And I was like, oh, well, keep Jefferson in mind because we got some grassroots stuff going on. So I really wanted him to donate some professional and like business casual clothes for everybody. And then there was one coat we needed a larger size. She couldn't find one because I guess everybody in Louisville said we need coats now. They gave me a $125 gift card to give their students so they can go out and purchase the coat. So it's the real thing. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question.
all of us have stuff in our closets and that we could probably give to Goodwill or something like that. Would it be possible that we could start something like that, to have a place we could take it so that our students might even be able to use? It's just a thought off the top of my head.
Yeah, and I thought about that, and we have a small like storage room at the Multicultural Center where we could like house these, but it's not a large space. So I don't want to become like the pseudo food bank / co-cloud. It could be a whole lot. So if you all have items, like my plan is to like buy a coat rack and start collecting some gently used items, because we do have students. And at some point, when I get a moment's time, I want to start collecting Pampers and like baby items for students too, because we have quite a few students who have children and newborns. I think does a kid give a birth yet? So her baby is due like this month. So we had a 15K baby on the way. And so we'll start collecting items like that. I think that's a great idea. And I see students, and I don't know if they're trying to look cute with their hoodies and their small jacket, or like you don't have a coat, but this is not cute weather, this is cold weather. So I would love to. So once we kind of solidify space where we can house that, and who's going to run the day-to-day of like, who gets the coats, how do you find out about the coats and all that, I would love to do that for our students, because I think we need to. So that's one happy. So this semester there were 26 students that participated in the program. So the overall fall 2018 semester GPA for the entire cohort, that's everybody, this is the average GPA, is 2.74. The benchmark was 2.0. 18 out of the 26 students are returning in spring, and by returning I mean that they are registered and got classes. And that number could go up because, as you know, students are still registering. One student is graduating, so she's walking in May, so she's not taking classes this semester, so that's a win. The cumulative GPA for the entire cohort, this is all 26 students, is 2.56. The benchmark was 2.0. 100% of the students participated in the coaching appointment, so every month, sometimes twice a month, sometimes 3 times a month, depending on what was going on with that student. They either met with Brittany or myself, so all 26 students participated in that. 8 of the 26 students have 4.0 GPAs. One student was awarded the Presidential Scholarship and the John T. Smith Scholarship, and it was an absolute lifesaver for her because she is out of financial aid. She is a member of Family Scholar House. She is an awesome student, awesome single parent, and she was just elated to get that scholarship and is excited and glad that she can continue her education here at Jefferson. But I told her, it was just me sending the email that you had the grades that qualified you for the scholarship. So we have a Presidential Scholarship recipient. And I also wanted to give a shout out to you all and our wonderful advisors. So I know throughout the semester I probably email a lot of people in this room saying, hey, how's this student doing? What's going on? And y'all provided some great detailed feedback where I can roll up on them and be like, hey, I know you ain't been to Jill's class. I'm gonna walk you. I am the Joe Clark of Jefferson. I will walk into class. Chains will be on the doors. I'm not and so I really appreciate that because it told to students that said like, oh wow, like they really do care about me and they really will tell what's going on. And I can't hide from these people because they're everywhere. And I'm like, yes, I'm everywhere. So thank you so much for me. And it was immediate feedback. You all, I think the average wait time, I think was 24 hours when y'all emailed me back and was like, yeah, this student is doing great, or no, not so much. I think the student needs to drop this class. And that really helped save a bunch of their GPAs that we could find it out early. So shout out to you all for responding to my emails and using Starfish because we really rely on that software as this cohort is getting bigger. So next year it'll be 120 students. Let's see. Also, shout out to the advisors. I really, really appreciate all y'all's hard work. I love the START advising model that we have. So Brandon is excellent. Our students always have advising questions, and I really appreciate the fact that I can reach out to any advisor and say, hey, what's going on with this? And if y'all don't have the answer, y'all can redirect me. So thank you so much for that. And then also, office hours in the Multicultural Center. So if you people have emailed me asking can you do that, you absolutely can. There's an office space. The person that you need to email is Brittany. Raise your hand, Brittany. Woo! Yeah. So email Brittany. There is a flexible office space in the Multicultural Center that you all can use. If you want to do office hours in the Multicultural Center, if you want to have your class in the Multicultural Center, tutoring in the Multicultural Center, yes. Email Brittany right in because I get back here. Yes. And then Nosy, any questions? Okay, thanks.
I know our time is up, hand the mic back over, but I just want to say how grateful I am to Danielle for her hard work and all the good work that's going on. I appreciate her saying a shout out to all of you. I am particularly grateful for all of the folks in student affairs. We have a very strong team that does excellent work every day, and I'm just really, really pleased to be starting another year with more exciting things to come. So thank you all very much.
Thanks to Danielle, I think this feels like Antarctica to a lot of people, not just you. I lived in Vermont for 5 years. This is a typical Vermont winter day, okay? This is cold. Okay, so I think, Diane, have you,
I can, yeah, I was thinking I was gonna have a break. but
that's
I
what
thought-
you're gonna, well, I have to, where's Pete Rodsky? Is he still here? Yeah, Pete came up to me earlier today and said that his, something must have happened over the holidays and his bonus didn't get in the mail. What have you. So I wanted to give him his bonus. It's a biscuit. There you go.
I'm not used to where this goes in.
Let's get some technical help.
Yeah, technically, you know.
Here comes Pete.
So I only have 3 slides.
I'm only gonna, we have a meeting this afternoon for the division chairs and program coordinators, and we've got a pretty long and pretty heavy agenda for that. So the only thing that I want to talk about this morning while everybody's here is the beginning of our SACS reaffirmation process. I went back the other day and found our timeline for our 2010 reaffirmation. And basically, we started in January of 2008 with preparing for that visit. So I do want to talk about just a couple of things here. Let me see if I can. First of all, the new principles of accreditation did pass, and so I'm going to be distributing a copy of those to all the division chairs, program coordinators, and deans. There's not a lot that is different, except that there is a key addition of one piece of information which we now have to report on, and that is on our efforts with financial literacy for our students. So guess what? We are in the catbird seat for that, given the great work that's been done, the award-winning work that has been done on that. So that's good. There are still questions about the implementation of these new principles, some things about, what things you have to meet in order to be reaffirmed, et cetera. We, Dr. Handy, Brittany, and Gary and I are going to Atlanta later this month for an orientation. But what I want to talk about right now is essentially what this 2-year process looks like. Basically, we need to begin working on our quality enhancement plan now. The quality enhancement plan is the second piece of the SACS reaffirmation. The first piece is a compliance report where we talk about the fact that we meet each of the standards that we have to meet to be accredited, and we describe how we're doing that. And that will be primarily a process that will be, the writing and the driving of that will be done kind of centrally, but we will be working with a lot of people to obviously gather the information that we need for that. The second piece is the quality enhancement plan. And this is how it's currently described. Those of you who remember the QEP from before, when it was first envisioned, the kind of thing we were told by Sachs is it needs to be something that's potentially transformative for the institution. And it needs, super broad involvement from all constituencies. I think there was there was a kind of unwritten mythology that developed that there needed to be a substantial financial investment in the QEP. Our QEP, we invested over a period of 5 years, close to $3 million. So we are, fortunately, some of those things have changed, and some of the expectations have been de-escalated. But there is certainly an expectation that everyone in the institution has an opportunity to say what they see as the key items that would be possible QEP topics. And so that's why I want to just introduce this today and get people thinking about it. This is the current language now, passed in December, for 7.2, which is now the QEP. Notice what it says. We have a topic identified through our ongoing comprehensive planning and evaluation processes. So the key thing here is that we don't all stay together, get together and decide, this is what we'd like to work on. The idea is that we have been gathering information on all units of the college for years and identifying strengths and weaknesses. We've done that through the assessments that we give, the college-wide ones like the SESI and general education assessments. We obviously have a data team that's been looking at all kinds of data. Every unit has its own evaluation process that happens annually. So the expectation is that we have a deep understanding of the strengths and weaknesses of our students in terms of their success, and that this emerges from that, this topic emerges from that. We've already had some people give some suggestions, and what I'll be asking for college-wide are suggestions about possible topics. Second thing, it has broad-based support of institutional constituencies. So that means that we will ensure that it's something that the institution generally can buy into as critical to student success and as something that is worth the 5-year effort that we're going to put into it. Third, focuses on improving specific student learning outcomes and or student success. So, we will be expected to have learning outcomes that we believe our QEP will allow students to achieve in a better way than they do now. And we will have to talk about how we'll implement that, how we will assess it. Commits resources to initiate, implement, and complete the QEP. Does not say that we have to invest huge new amounts of money, and resources refer not only to financial resources, but obviously the personnel resources, and so it could be that there will be some reallocation of things in order to support the QEP, whatever it turns out to be. And includes a plan to assess achievement. So basically, this is what our QEP needs to look like. And again, the key thing is that it grows out of things we have already identified through our processes as important for our students. So I want to show you basically, this is my last slide here, the kind of a tentative timeline for this. And I'm going to be asking for people who would like to serve on, there'll be basically kind of two sets of committees working on this QEP. The first one will be a group that works on selecting the topic, on gathering information and suggestions from all around the college, and that means all of our college constituencies, faculty, staff, administration, board, etc. So discussion, research, and topic selection. In the summer and fall of this year, we need to refine our topic. We need to do the literature search where we look at as many best practices as possible to tackle the topic we've decided on. We get an outline of what our goals for the QEP are going to be, what our student learning outcomes are, our implementation strategies, our resource needs, and our assessment plan. Because all of those things are what we will essentially, the visiting team will talk about that. In spring of 18, we need to prepare a draft of this. I'm sorry, yeah. Forget that. Spring of 19, I'm still in the past. Prepare a draft, and we will have to, in fall, we will complete the QEP in summer of 19. In fall of 19, we will have our visit from Saks. I mean, it could happen in early spring, but I think it's going to be fall of 19. And then in 2020, in June, when the Saks board meets, we will get notification of reaffirmation. So, that she said confidently. So the next 2 years, calendar years, are critical in terms of doing this. So what I just want to ask is that you think about whether you would like to volunteer. I've already had a few people say they wanted to volunteer and participate in this first phase of it. Because who will lead the QEP effort and who will work on the drafting of all the details will largely depend on what we decide on and who are the subject matter experts or people who are experts in some of the broad areas of the QEP that we have to address. So that's really all I wanted to talk about today, is to make sure that this is on your mental radar and that it is very important that you respond, because as we begin this process, for instance, I will need to record today. This is a day we met. How many people were here? What did we say about the QEP? And so we need right now to begin the documentation of this process, because we will be asked to say, how did you involve your institution? When did you involve your institution? Etc. So prepare to hear a lot about Saks in the next 2 years. Why are you applauding? I mean, ask yourself.
In the spirit of the presidential inauguration, and there were thousands of people. Thousands.
A lot more than the last time we started the QEP.
Well, and my input on the QEP, and believe me, there's no real conversations going on about what it should be, but we've got a lot of projects in the works right now, a lot of good work going on. So any way we can piggyback on that and integrate and not bite off something totally separate, totally new, that redirects our focus somewhere else, seems to me to be the wisest course of action. So think about the projects you're involved in, your department or division is involved in, some of the grant work that's happening, some of the Achieving the Dream, the SEM stuff, things we're doing, and see if we can come up with some ideas that also complement that as opposed to compete with that sort of work. So that would be my only input on what it should do. So I have a presentation, and we're quite frankly running ahead. I think the invitation said 8:30 to noon. I'm going to shoot for 11 o'clock, okay? So let's see if we can make it. Biggest applause of the day right there. I only have 8 slides, 3 of them were the title slides there. One thing that I played. So let me go through a few things with you to give you kind of an update about the college. I'll end with questions and give you a chance to ask me questions on any of this stuff or anything else that's troubling you or that you'd like to have more information on. There's the first 3 slides. We're on slide 4. There's the 4th slide. Why Hawaii 5-0? Why on the coldest day of the year, I think it's the coldest day of the year, when we come in here with a Hawaiian theme that forces me to wear a short sleeve shirt to work or what have you. And because Keila Nani Keila, that's why, okay? That's Hawaiian, okay? Today is a beautiful day, whether you think so or not. Retention, fall to fall for 1 year is up by 5%. Folks, we crossed the magical 50% threshold. We were at 47.6%, I think it's the next thing, 47.6% retention last fall. That's fall students from the previous year coming back the following fall, okay? To this year, 52.8%. You may have, if you really listen closely, and I wouldn't have expected this from many, or what have you, you may have heard me say in a previous thing, national average is in the 57, 58% range. And I said, man, we need to close that gap within several years. We closed it by half in 1 year. Okay, closed it by half in 1 year. Tremendous amount of momentum on this, okay? We've got to continue to, we can't lose this momentum. It's a start in the right direction. It's happening at the right time. Enrollments are starting to come back up. This is part of the reason, I'm sure. Okay, we've got this LOOP program that's going to bring hundreds more students into us. We want to keep those individuals here. We've got a state and a local community that's probably going to be making a promise to students about financing their education that's going to drive more students to us. The timing is perfect for pulling this thing together, and you're doing great work. One of the most common questions I've been asked a couple times in meetings, more often in private conversations, is, and it's true, the following question. So we're talking a lot about improving retention. What do you really want us to do? What is it that you think we should be doing? And the answer is, and I'm going to defend it here in a few slides, I don't know. That's the answer. Okay? I know what I would do. I know what I do in the classes when I teach, or what have you, but I don't know what's going to work for each individual person. Okay? It's an individual effort that comes together in a collective success. And so I want to talk a little bit about how we're going to get at that a little more later. Because I don't know the answer, but I think I've found the process that we can use to get there. And that's what I want to talk about in a couple of minutes. But this is great stuff. We're really moving ahead. This is going to be very impactful for the college. And that's not all. I mean, that's the big news, I guess, overall. But there are other things that are happening. Fall enrollment, folks, was up 3.3%. We're back over 12,000 students. Okay, that's important to us. I mean, Gary made the comment when we first started, state budget cuts. We're facing a state budget cut. This sort of thing makes it easy to accommodate. There'll be no changes in what we're doing. Don't say that, he says. It's true, okay? It's true, we can accommodate. So I went home, Gary and I went home for holiday break, prepared for a governor's announcement that they were gonna cut 10% from our state budget January 1st. That would be $1.3 million. And we didn't say anything because we didn't want to panic anybody. We didn't want anybody to be concerned over the holidays or what have you, but that was the whisper that was coming out of the State House. Instead, we've been cut $175,000. Okay, the governor saw fit to protect colleges and universities this round. Okay, and here's the truth. $1.3 million, we wouldn't have liked it. We could have done it. We would not have affected any positions, would not have affected any expected expenditures or anything like that. We're doing well enough these days that we can afford that kind of hit if we have to have it. Really what it does, and I've said this before, these cuts impact our future flexibility to do things. Think about that. There's a lot of things we want to do. Ben could spend every penny of that $1.3 million without any trouble, okay? And we would be better off as a college if we were able to do that. The problem is when we're doing all this hard work and we're really improving ourselves financially as we improve on these sorts of things, and the state sweeps that money away through budget cuts, is we lose that flexibility. That's what we have to be prepared to see happen in the coming few years. There's going to be some of that happen. My commitment is to do everything we can do to make sure we don't get ourselves in a situation like we were in before, where it becomes personal. Okay? We want it to be corporate. We want it to be affecting our overall financial landscape, not individual lives and livelihoods. So that's where we are. We're in great shape. So Gary's right. There's a state budget cut. Absolutely right. It is really not going to hamper us significantly this year. So, and I'll get to that in a minute. So fall enrollment is up. Right now, spring is running pretty flat. I think we were down 0.1% or something, the last number I saw. Right? So, I mean, it was, count the number of students we're down on 2 hands and 2 feet or something. We're very close, okay, to where we were. And it doesn't make sense to me, although sometimes the data doesn't always resonate the way I think it should, where we end up with high retention, and yet the enrollment numbers don't seem to pan out. So you got to recognize the retention cohort. We're using, for retention purposes, when I say we're up 5%, we're actually at 5.2%, but there wasn't a Hawaii 5.2. They should have done that for the second one, right? Well, we had Achieving the Dream 2.0, they should have a Hawaii 5.2. But anyways, what was I going to say? What was I saying? The numbers don't work because the cohort, IPED's the National Clearinghouse for all this data, uses first-time, full-time students. So we look at our entire set of first-time, full-time students last fall and track them to the following fall. That's the group that's up 5%. If we look at all of our students who came last fall versus this fall, it's naturally going to be lower because you've got students who came for one-off sort of courses or in programs that were, that they weren't going to be here that long. So the actual number there is like 3.3% or something, Brittany. Somewhere in that neighborhood, it's a little less. Okay, well, it may actually mirror this number pretty closely, right? The other thing that's interesting, it's a cause for celebration, but also a continued cause for concern. Underrepresented minority students. We know that represents 1/3 of our student body, right? A very critical group of students that we need to be really impactful for. Hey, they're up 4.2%. Okay, that sounds wonderful, but that's lower than our overall rate. So yes, there was progress, but the gap got a little wider, right? That's troubling. So there's very good news about moving the needle in the right direction, and we should feel very good about that. But our most needful students are still struggling, and we want to work with them and help them and do everything we can. Danielle was making some comments, and Laura was making some comments about these interventions. And as someone who taught quite a bit, my first gut reaction to some extent was, I shouldn't hold their hand like that. Part of learning is learning to be independent and they're doing these things on their own. And I understand that reaction from faculty. I have it a little bit too. But guess what? That's where we want them to be. It is not where they are now. Right? That's where we want them to be as students. And if they can't get to that point at the community college, they're probably not going to ever get to that point. And so for me, and I had to do a little gut check when you were talking there, Danielle, because that was my first reaction as a teacher. And I thought, no. When they're finished is when that outcome needs to be there. We're unrealistic if we expect that outcome when they're beginning. And that's part of our challenge, is getting over that hurdle of stuff. So, okay. I want to talk specifically, there's lots of positive stories I could give, but I want to give one specific positive story that's really impressed me over the past year and a half or so. And that's what's been going on in the math department. Right? And so the math department has just really shined. I first caught a hint of this almost a year ago when the Office of Institutional Effectiveness gave me some information a semester later, a year later, on class GPAs and instructor GPAs and drop rates and things of this sort. And when I looked by division at every unit in the college, the math department had by far the largest gain in class GPA of any department in the school. And they went up by 0.15. which, I think it was from 2.25 to 2.4 or something as an average GPA for that department. And being the cynic that I am, my first reaction was, I'll bet I can go to the drop rate and I'll see why it was up. Because they had more students withdraw, and the good ones stayed, and they got rid of the bad ones, and that made the difference. Their drop rate went down. While their GPA went up that much, their drop rate went down. That's pretty good stuff, isn't it? So that was my first hint from the data that something's going on in the math department. Then I go to these long, boring, drawn-out Title III meetings and hear about the curricular changes that are going on. And I'm trying not to answer my email in the meeting and things of that sort. And the reality is, my goodness, are they doing some good work in those meetings? Or at least are they reporting some good work that's going on? So you see some of the data up here for two of our most important math courses. And believe me, math is probably the most significant barrier for student success, right? Now, as we say that, they keep doing this, and math won't be the most significant barrier for student success. Biology might be, or chemistry might be, or I don't know what it'll be, but it may transition here with this work. Okay, because they're up 8. It's not 8%. They're up 8 percentage points. Okay, they've gone from a 67.3% to 67.3% retention in the following course from that class. 94% retention rate in the course, right? And think about that. Okay, I believe one of the first data points I said when I was here, and I felt bad about it because I felt like I was picking or whatever, was a Math 150 section or class online that had a 9 out of 10 students failed to get through it, right? If you look at what's happening here in this department, I'm just really pleased with it. And so I had Terry had tried her best to get me, is she still here? No, she tried her best to get me to dress up in a grass skirt. And I had flashes of Jim Ramsey in his sombrero and things of that sort, and cultural misappropriation of things, which is causing me not to even want to wear a cowboy hat anymore or anything like that. But so Terry ordered me this grass skirt or what have you, thinking I would actually wear it. And we are going to have to add it to his W-2, but I know he has kids, so Drew Wilkerson gets this grass skirt.
You go with your Christmas suit.
Okay. And he has to wear it for his kids and all, and I doubt they'll be offended or what have you. We have pictures are requested, so anyways. But and this isn't the only department. There's good things happening all over the college, but there's really good work. And this emphasis of thinking about how we can help students stay in and be successful and persist and then come back is really important thought. Okay, and there's nothing that the math department did that I could have told them to do. Okay, so when I said I don't know the answer, I certainly would not have done what they did that resulted in this. Okay, so some more poorly pronounced Hawaiian for you, just a little bit here. Okay, I want to chalk these improvements up to 2 basic things, and I found Hawaiian phrases for both of them. Okay, the concept of kuleana. Kuleana. One's personal sense of responsibility. Your kuleana. Right? And I think many of us, if not most of us, have that personal sense of responsibility. We don't do this because of the Christmas bonus we get. Right, Pete? Right? Okay?
Does this biscuit come with a Jelly of the Month club? I'm here all week.
It comes with a small addition to your W-2 for the value of that thing, I'm afraid. So your kuleana, your personal sense of responsibility. And this one, which I really like the last word, it made me think of Humana down the road here. Malama ka hamana. Malama ka hamana. Right? Which in the education circles in Hawaii means to care for one's students. To care for one. And I didn't make these words up. They are actual phrases. I think you can go out there and Google them. And it doesn't say, "Can I have an omelet, please?" Or something like that. Okay? So I really want to chalk these up to what you all are doing individually and collectively to try to impact student success. It's not something the institution is doing, except drawing attention to the need.
That's all we've tried to do is draw attention to the need. And that's probably not enough, but it's a good start because look what it helped us do. Okay? So, that's the good news on that front. I want to give you a few other updates real quickly, just so you're aware of what's going on. We broke ground on the Ammett building in December. What that means is some dirt was dumped in a parking lot and then removed later. The actual, we needed that to be able to really formally start doing some fundraising things. We need to raise some more money from corporate partners. That's the big group that we really need to work with. The nice thing is we have some matching money that's been laid on the table by the Brown Foundation. So we can raise up to $3 million, and they'll match it dollar for dollar for us for this project. So that's our goal, and we'll see just how successful we are. The other nice thing is our local business community. I was actually told by a couple people not to go raise that money because they wanted to make sure they were doing it. They felt a civic responsibility to be deeply involved in that and working with those business partners. So we've been a little slow to start. Don and I would have probably been doing a lot more already if I had been told to be slower about it. And a little, but so I'm pleased to see local volunteer folks. And you know the group. It's Jim Lancaster, it's Carla Deering, it's Lynn Fisher, it's other people who are really on the front edge of what we're doing, that they want to be involved in those asks and that cultivation of resources and things. So the Ammett project, tomorrow afternoon, we get the final schematics for the building, and they're ready to rock and roll. The demolition permits are being prepared, and that soil testing is going on, and I would say by spring break, we'll start to see some destruction and then some construction. We were very successful with something that we weren't sure how it was going to come out. We thought it was going to be a bit of a political process, but the system office set aside money for grants to 3 colleges for working with adult student populations. And it was a peer-reviewed process. I was on the committee that reviewed. 15 of the 16 schools submitted grants, and I'm pleased to announce Jefferson got one of the 3 grants. So we're successful. All right? So there are a number of people involved in that, but this is going to be a grant that works. You know, we're setting up for an interesting population of students that we're going to be able to really do some more outreach for on the adult side. And these are SNAP recipient students. It's the old food stamp program. I forget what SNAP stands for exactly. It stands for something. So it's these students these individuals before they can maintain eligibility or become eligible will either need to be working, need to be volunteering, or need to be pursuing an education. And so our grant is focused on how we're going to reach out and impact that student population. By the way, it's over 12,000 possible, 12,000 people, I think, in our service area. Okay? Now, I would say 6 out of 10 of those aren't college ready, right? But if 2,000 are, that's a sizable market that we're going to be able to reach and work with. Yes?
Could you define adult student in terms of age?
So it's going to be, when I say adult student, probably using a bad term, people eligible for food stamps. Okay, so you could be 18 probably and qualify for that. I don't know how that works exactly, but you could probably qualify. So it's not over age 25 or something like that, okay? We had a small sample, 250 students or 250 individuals, and through the magic of whatever Joanna does, she was able to run and try to figure out how many of those were college ready, and based on her estimate, I think 60 of the 250 or so. So about 20%, would that be about 20%? Yeah, roughly 20% of the population was college ready. So if that's the case, that's quite a population for us. So we'll be working on that, and I just want to say congratulations to all of you, those of you who worked on preparing that grant or what have you, because our colleagues selected us for that. State budget adjustments, already broke the news on that, $175,000. You know, it is what it is. We're no problem. Our intent is to have this college operating financially so that even though we don't like seeing those things, we can accommodate them when they hit. And this one's hit. The next thing to hit will be the 16th of this month when the governor gives his budget presentation. I'll make sure I'm there to hear it. I have to look him in the eyes. Not that that changes anything, but I'll make sure I'm there to hear what he has to say. I'm expecting doom and gloom. This pension crisis is a real crisis. It's not fake. And it's not going to go away. In fact, it only gets worse if we kick it down the road. So as I meet with legislators this session, my message to them is going to be that my background in finance tells me that the definition of risk is the word uncertainty. That's the definition of risk. And this pension crisis has left us so uncertain, we're paralyzed around this state for what we can do. We need clarity about what's going to fix it. And it may be painful, but we got to know. We need to know what rock bottom is in terms of the state's operation so that we can build from there instead of sitting around wondering when the next hammer's going to fall. And that's going to be my message to the legislators, is that we're going to have to do our share. We're part of the state, just like everybody else. Hopefully the governor will see the value of investment in education, like he did with this round of cuts. There are offices taking up to a 6% cut, by the way. Our cut is less than 1%. Yeah, I think it's less than 1% by the time it's done. The governor's office has taken a 5.4% cut to their budget. So the fear is, what I expect him to say on the 16th is something on the order of a 17 to 20% cut in state funding for education next year. That's how bad I think it'll be. Okay, now, then it goes through the process. Where does he really want it to land? We're preparing a budget, so you all know, that anticipates about a 10% state budget cut.
Plus the increase in pension.
Oh, plus the increase in pension costs. Get this, folks, I may have said this before. Pension costs this past year were 46.7%, something like that. Call it 46%. So if you got paid $1 and you were in state pension fund, we had to put 46 cents into that fund on your behalf. Okay? Next year it's 84%.
Do we still have a lot of employees in the state pension?
We have enough that the cost to us, it's spread system-wide. There's enough system employees. Our share of the cost is $933,000. Okay, that'll be in our budget next year.
So if you add that to a 10% cut, you're 2 point.
Yeah, so if you add that, if you have 1.3, we're about 13 million state funding, that's 1.3 million. Another million for this thing, we're 2.3 million in cuts. Gary hates me for this. We can do it. Okay, I don't want to do it. Okay, but we have the financial flexibility. What I think this year will end up strong enough that we can have that sort of cut next year and be okay. Okay, can we have it 5 years in a row? No. Okay, that would be unrealistic. But we've positioned ourselves financially where we can have this kind of adjustment. And it hurts, but it doesn't cripple. Okay, so anyways, there's going to be some state adjustments. You're going to hear some more horror stories before you hear good stories. So don't panic on those. One of the good stories is a bill's been filed, along with dollars for appropriation, to give free college education at the Kentucky community colleges only to every resident in the state who graduates from high school year. And the actual cost projected by the state budget group or whatever is only $20 million a year. That's all it would cost, because most of them would qualify for Pell Grants and state aid already. All right? It's a wonderful program. The conversation started last year. It became a little political and died. Now we have a pre-built, I think it's pre-filed bill that I believe is bipartisan about doing that sort of thing. So we're probably going to become more tuition dependent. I shouldn't even say the word probably. We are going to become more tuition dependent on the institution. It's the nature of where we're headed. If our retention and success rates are going in the right direction at the same time, we will thrive under that. It'll be okay for us. So I'm not negative about it at all. So those are the state budget things. Keep an eye on what's happening. I'll try to keep you updated. I'm going to send a little email out today, this afternoon, that sort of puts in writing a $175,000 cut, so you see that. Anybody who wasn't here sees that. Bottom line is no positions, no budgets are going to be affected. Are going to be impacted. Shelbyville campus. No news at this point. I know it's on, people are thinking about it some people are thinking about it, so I wanted to put it up here. At this point, there is an attorney who's working on some draft language that begins the actual conversations about how a joint occupancy might work. Okay? Once that draft language, once there's a template to work from, then we'll start sitting down. I've committed to get faculty and staff out at Shelbyville to be involved in that, so they can see that, react to it, have input into it, things of that sort. before we move to anything. We just don't have anything on paper yet. That's apparently being worked on. Probably not a whole lot over the break though. Okay, so yes, sir. Sorry, yes.
Explain that a little better.
Okay, oh yes, so what's happening there, or what the potential there is, the Shelby County School System has approached us with an offer to purchase that facility. Okay, with the return of a long-term lease, I won't call it a lease, a long-term shared use agreement, where we continue to occupy it. But they can build onto it, they can use the property around it, and they want to create a real educational campus there. They have other properties that co-join that, and they have a bigger vision for that area. We're a part of that vision. The devil's in the details. We need to make sure our needs are protected, right? And we don't want to have programs that have to leave because, you know, they want that space for something. So we have to iron all that out and work all that. They're committing that that's not the case, but we need a shared use agreement that says all that so that we're comfortable with it. And that's where we're at.
Do you know what percent of the space is being used by them right now?
So right now, we rent them, they're paying $75,000 a year for their big picture school program that they have with us. Okay, well, you know, it's not much. Nobody in education rents to or from for market rate, right? So it's much less than market rate or what have you. But they're not using a fifth of the space, I would say right now. Okay, and when this shared usage agreement's done, it's not going to be them using a whole lot more than that. Okay, unless there's space that we're just simply not using, it makes sense for them to be able to use. So anyways, so that's what's going on there. And again, it involves a long-term commitment. It saves us money each year. We don't have to re-roof the building, and we don't have to redo some things that we know several $1 million in investments that need to come in the next few years. We know that's not going to happen. And it gives us some cash, and we would simply bank that cash for a rainy day. Okay, we would not use that cash as part of our ongoing budget, so it's not. Okay. So, where do we go from here? This is the last part of my presentation. Where do we go from here in terms of this question that I brought forward at the very beginning that I've been asked, I bet I've been asked 7 or 8 times, you know, what besides talking about the problem can we do to address the problem in terms of improving, or the challenge of improving student success rates? And so as part of that search, about probably sometime in the spring, Franklin Covey, you may recognize that name. They're one of the leading training arms. You know, people said, who are the top training companies in the U.S. today? People would talk about Disney customer service, and they'd probably talk about Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and everything that's come out of that since then. Well, Franklin Covey is this group. Well, not the Disney group, but they're the Stephen Covey group that do a lot of corporate, a lot of nonprofit, quite a bit of higher education institution training, and we decided to buy into that and to look at what they're doing and how they organize. Their focus is on organizing how you go about addressing key institutional needs. And I won't go into their training too much except to say there's 3 tenets to their training. Number 1 is you can't do a dozen things and do them right. It's pretty basic. It's pretty basic stuff. You need to pick 1 or 2. And if your job relies on you doing 12 things perfectly, you're not going to get your job done. Right? That's tenet number 1. Tenet number 2 is the CEO does not get to decide, or should not decide. Let me say it a different way. The ownership of what needs to be done needs to be across the institution. And I've talked about ownership quite a bit as a cultural sort of important part of our culture here that we need to make sure we're doing. And the way they define that is the CEO has to be willing to step away and let people decide, like the math department did here, what sorts of things need to be done to improve success. And the CEO has to have the courage or the humility or whatever it is to not be the boss on those sorts of things. And the third piece that's very important to them is you got to keep a scorecard. You got to run data that shows how you're doing, and you got to look at it critically and say, yes, this is working, we're up 5%, or no, it's not working, we didn't move the needle at all, and we're going to address it. You got to have that commitment. That's their 3 pieces. The reason they only have a 3-piece sort of approach is because their very first piece is you can't do 12 things at once. Right? So they boil it down to the bare minimum. So in the fall, about 40 of us spent 2 long days, maybe more than that, 3 long, I don't know, we've got about 20 hours, 4 long days, Danielle was counting, 4 long days trying to understand their product. By the way, we're going to spend some money on this. How much did we spend in 3 years? You said $3 million on, you made a comment about that. Oh, Diane did, oh, $3 million? We're going to spend money too. We're going to spend about $50,000. Okay, we're going to spend about $50,000, I'm sorry, Laura. We're going to spend about 50 grand on this thing. We're not spending millions, there's no need to. We've already got the wheels turning on things. So 30, 40 of us started in the fall. It's going to be rolled out this spring. Okay, program chairs, division chairs, others, you're all coming to an event late January? So you're going to get to see what's happening. We've made one key decision as a group, and you'll see that in a minute. Okay? And it's a no-brainer. Okay? The intent is to answer the question, you know, I've said this already, where people are asking me, what do you want us to do differently? What is it? Right? Sometimes it's asked sarcastically. Are you just saying we need to raise grades? Or we need to pass everybody? Sometimes it's said proactively. I really want to do something, but I don't know what to do. Okay? This is the intent to answer that question. Secondary intent is to continue the emphasis on us owning it. Okay? State can cut our money all they want. Doesn't matter. We have to survive. We have to thrive. And we can if we'll own that. Okay? And not worry about what the state does. So, here are the decisions that were made by the groups that met in the fall. Okay? Top item, first of all, the Franklin Covey training said, what is the most important goal that you need to have? And underneath that most important goal going forward, what are 3 sub-goals? They call them WIGs, wildly important goals. What are 3 wildly important goals that you would like people to organize their behavior around? And I don't think you're going to be surprised at these. So let's actually start at the 3. Let's not start at the top, let's start at the bottom 3 here, and let me explain each of those to you real quick. Okay? Increase student satisfaction as measured by increasing the student retention rate. We want our student retention rate to go up. Okay? That's what we want. Bottom line, we just reported it, up 5.2% in 1 year. We want it up another 3% next year, and another 3% after that. And we want to get probably to somewhere in the 60s. With that retention rate. We know we can't be perfect. We will not retain all students, because all students don't deserve to be retained. They won't do the work, but we can retain more. So that's one, and we're going to measure it by looking at the retention rate. Second one, increase the underrepresented minority success rate. We want to focus on that population and help the gap, even with as much success as we just had, the gap got a little wider. Right? This group needs extra attention. And so we want to carve that out as one of our 3 key driving goals, sub-goals, that we're going to focus on improving the retention rate of that group. The work that Danielle and others are going to lead in terms of, are leading and have been leading, in terms of how we're going to impact that student group success rate. And then finally, and this should appeal to faculty quite a bit, increase course-based success. Okay, as measured by increasing the proportion of students earning an A, B, or C. In other words, we want a greater proportion of our students to succeed in classes. There is a logical link between, I hope, getting better grades, earning better grades, not being given better grades, earning better grades, and being retained. And so these are the 3 that we selected. Right? They just went through this process. I had a conversation with them right before the break. The consultant went through this process with State University of New York at, I can't think of the name of the school, one of the SUNY schools. He said, might as well met with the same group. Their 3 sub-goals are identical to ours, basically. In fact, they were stuck. They couldn't figure out how to measure student satisfaction. And so she said in a moment of weakness, she told them what we were going to do is just substitute retention for that. And they said, oh, that's it. Right? And so they're adopting that too. Okay? So anyways, but those are the 3 sub-goals. Overall, what's that going to do? Our top goal was we need more people graduating with credentials that put them in work or put them into school somewhere else or that meet their life needs. And so our overall goal is to increase the number of degrees, diplomas, and certificates and I didn't put as measured by, but as measured by having more of those kids. Okay? And it sort of aligns nicely with performance funding, because 35% of our state appropriation, once we're at 100% performance funding, will come from that number. It is the single largest impact on our state funding. So it does line up with our state funding. It's still the right thing to do. So those are the high-end, really gut-wrenching, challenging decisions we made as a group about what's most important to this college. And I hope you don't look at those and go, well, that's not most important to this college. This is important stuff to the college, and that's what we're doing. So now what happens is we roll it out college-wide, and we start to use the Franklin Covey framework for getting every department, every division to look at one of those goals based on the data in their area and say, here's what we're going to do to help ratchet that one up. Okay? And this is where the CEO steps back, and he doesn't tell the math department that, no, I want you to, doesn't get to do that. Okay? The math department gets to decide. Now they have to, when they see the data for how it's going, if it's not working, they're going to have to tweak it and do it differently. But the ownership of the scorecard lies with everybody, not just with me or with my administrative team. So that's what we have. It's pretty straightforward. There is nothing magical about the Franklin Covey training. I guess they're going to demonstrate through what we see that an expert is anybody from more than 50 miles away who carries a briefcase, right? And we're going to pay $50,000 over the course of a year to get that expertise. But they're organizing us around a way that I think you can begin, you can help to answer that question of what do we need to do to keep this momentum going. And I'm not answering because I don't know. So I want to do one more thing, and nobody here, I hope, has seen this video. It takes 9 minutes or what have you, and it is unrelated to Franklin Covey. So I found this in December, and there are 3 versions of it. There's a 28-minute version and a 48-minute version. And each version's better than the other, but I'm going to show you the 9-minute version about I've watched all 3 of the versions. He does tell the one story, if you wanted, this might hook you into watching the longer version, where a SEAL team, he doesn't say that it's SEAL Team 6, is to come onto his boat to go carry out a mission. And they leave his boat to go carry out the mission. And 3.5 days later, he's supposed to pick them up at a certain spot. And he knows that, and they're in 2 Zodiacs. I guess those are the rubber rafts or whatever. And there's no communication during those 3.5 days because communications can be intercepted. And so they're supposed to be at this spot. And he knows that if they're not at this spot, that could be bad, right? And so they're approaching this spot or what have you. And I guess I didn't know this about a submarine. Submarines can go forward and they can go backwards, right? And so they're approaching this spot, and he looks at where they are on the map, and he looks over the shoulder of somebody, and he says, forward 1/3, or what have you, because he's worried they're gonna miss the spot where they're supposed to hit them, or what have you. And the enlisted guy sitting at the booth turns around to him and says, Captain, you're wrong. Because the boat was actually in a reverse pattern moving to where it needed to be. And he had made a mistake. I don't know that much about these boats or what have you. He made a mistake. He said on any other submarine in the Navy, they would have not picked up that crew. Because you do what the captain says. Right? You don't question, you just do. Or what have you. And he said his butt was saved by that person. So bottom line, pretty impactful, I think. What I want us to do with this Franklin Covey stuff that we're stepping, this initiative, is to try to step away from the traditional hierarchies and get teams of people thinking in their area about what they can do to impact this, the goal that's most important to one of those 3 sub-goals that's most important to their area. And I'm gonna step away from the process to the extent that I'm not gonna decide what that is, or what have you. We're gonna have you all making those decisions. And that's where Franklin Covey in the spring is going with this. And the goal is in the fall, we wanna stand some of it up in the spring. Have some of it up and running, maybe all of it up and running in the spring, by late spring, but we really start using it in the fall. And it becomes the way we track continued progress. And so that's the goal that I have here, or what have you. Now, with that done, that's questions. Not necessarily about this, about other things that may have not come up that I should have brought up today that you've been wondering about, or what have you. Yes, sir.
Can you give us an update on Louisville's Promise Scholarship?
Louisville Promise, there's a cabinet meeting tomorrow. Today's Thursday, the cabinet meeting tomorrow. The biggest cringing, the pucker factor for everybody is raising the money. Okay? We're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars. So they think, at minimum, it's $36 million they need to raise. Right? They think on an annual basis, it's about $3 million in cost. The city of Louisville could actually cover a $3 million. They had a $16 million profit last year, the city of Louisville. And the mayor is really behind this. So I think it is going to be eventually announced. But they're also hesitant because they don't know what the state's going to do. You know, you got this bill floating and stuff like that. I think it's going to happen. Okay? Maybe I'm being optimistic. What's that?
Like implementation timeline.
So they've talked about doing now a pilot this coming fall and doing it for everybody in the county the following fall. Okay, is what they're talking about. But they have a hard time deciding how to pilot, what to pilot. Because there'll be people who feel left out. You pilot a portion of the city or what have you, okay? And even the Rotary Promise is nervous because they made that at 2 high schools and they don't know what their long-term role is in that thing. But what I keep telling them is, believe me, these students have greater needs than just tuition and fees. Okay, and your money will not be wasted on these students helping them be successful. I'm expecting something. I don't know what it's going to take. Probably that one big donor who says, I'm going to step in and do this. Maybe John Schnatter has time. Other questions? You know, I have a great start to this semester. You ought to feel good about where we are as a college. I hope you feel good about it. And we're going to keep plugging to keep improving. And I hope you enjoyed breakfast. And I'll see you throughout the semester, okay? Thank you.